My guest today is Patrick Brown. Patrick's the owner and chief technician and chief bottle washer for Brown Computer Solutions. They have locations in Brattleboro, Bennington, and Keene, New Hampshire. Welcome, Patrick. Glad you could take some time today to join us and discuss fraud and discuss how computers are involved in fraud. Many of us hear that cyber fraud has been a growing problem and it's almost growing out of control. Is it as big a deal as some people make it out to be, or is this kind of overblown?
No, absolutely. I certainly think it's as big of a deal as the experts would say. I see victims of cyber fraud at some level every day. But one thing that I stress to people who have been victims or think they may be a victim is not to panic, because the first thing I see some people do is feel like they've been victimized and they want to destroy everything. And it's better to take a step back and start to understand what went wrong and how to actually fix it.
Okay, so it isn't the end of life as we know it on this planet. Right. There are approaches that either technologically or through other services people can work their way through most of the problems.
Yes. Okay.
What do you feel the major threats are to the average user? So, basically we're out there, we're using computers all the time. I sometimes use the line that, we really don't know a lot about the technology that we have, in that most people know how to use a computer for a very limited number of applications. But beyond that, they're kind of in la-la land, I guess. So what do you see as the major threats that you have to deal with that people should be concerned with?
The day-to-day things that we see are when people are browsing the internet and a pop-up message appears saying that your computer has a problem or your computer is infected. And these pop-ups sometimes pretend or appear that they're from the manufacturer of your computer or your favorite software company like Microsoft or Apple, and they have an 800 number to call, and a friendly person answers the phone and says, why, yes, your computer is infected. When in reality, they're just standing by waiting for phone calls from victims of their pop-up ad that was displayed on a website. And they don't know anything about your computer. They don't know your computer's infected or not infected. But what they do is they then take control of your computer by you letting them in. So it's really, customers tell me I've been hacked, and I say, well, that's not really being hacked. You opened the door and invited them in. So when you call those numbers from a pop-up ad, your computer's not infected when you get a pop-up, and that's where people become afraid.
That message that you see that says that your computer is 87% subject to viruses is not really something to...
That's an advertisement from a company that wants your money. And the first thing you do is you call the 800 number, and because you're afraid there's something wrong with your computer and it's 10 o'clock at night and Brown Computer Solutions is closed and you don't want to wait on hold with Apple, and this 800 number pops up and you think it's Apple, you let your guard down. And a lot of people who are very guarded all the time will talk to these people for a minute. They'll get their credit card out of their wallet. They might not even get their credit card out of their wallet. They let the people in first, because the tool that these people use is to get control of your computer first. They don't ask for money right away. They want to show you evidence that, they'll pull up a terminal window on your Mac and type in a command like netstat, and it looks really scary to someone who doesn't know what that looks like, and they'll say key phrases like, your IP address has been compromised. That's not a thing. Or all of the devices in your house are compromised. So we'll sell you a family plan or a lifetime plan, or, Apple doesn't do this, Microsoft doesn't do this, no one but the scammers tend to do this, and your IP address is just a place. It can't be compromised. It's just the address of your house on the internet.
So I kind of see two dangers here. One is that you're going to be paying money to repair something that doesn't need to be
Yes.
repaired. But to me, the scarier part is once I let them into my computer, all my data, any passwords,
in their hands.
any credit card numbers, personal information is now going to be sucked out of my computer basically, or copied.
In almost all cases that I've seen, these scams pretty much stop at the charging your credit card, or you're taking money out of your checking account, or taking your money for not fixing a problem. And my fear is that once they are in your computer, you've given them the reins, you've given them the steering wheel, and they can drive your computer wherever they want. They could do something like plant a crypto locker on your hard drive, so that when you double click on this file, or even don't double click on this file, after a set period of time, the contents of your computer could become encrypted and password protected, and they could hold your data hostage so that you wouldn't be able to, open your photos ever again unless you gave them $5,000.
So basically a ransomware attack.
Yeah, I mean, I see ransomware attacks as a separate threat, but I can't see why the next level of these tech support scams wouldn't be to plant ransomware while they're in there. So they would get you coming and going, especially if you decide not to. Once they're in your computer, if you say no and kick them out, that would be a way for them to retaliate and get even more money.
Now, basically, Apple, Microsoft, Intel, they really don't watch your individual computer or care, do
Right.
they?
These big companies, your operating system companies and your hardware companies, they're certainly working all of the time to try to fix massive problems for everyone, but they don't they don't watch individual devices. They're not watching your computer and saying, "Ooh, you have malware," or "Your computer is infected." And no one's actually really doing that unless you're paying a reputable security software developer or provider to do that. So, Microsoft and Apple and your bank and none of those people are going to, send you an email or give you a pop-up message in your web browser saying there's something wrong.
Okay. Let's take a few minutes to talk about software issues. One being that passwords. Now, I know that passwords are important, and my understanding is that the number one password used by people in the United States is the word password.
Still, yes.
Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the importance here of having a unique password in terms of specific software, or even your home network or your computer?
So it's really important to have unique passwords for yourself that are separate for different services or websites, because one example of a way that sites can be broken into is using other sites' password reset mechanisms that are different. If you use the same password for Amazon, for Apple, for Google, for Microsoft, for all those sites, and someone realizes that you are using the same email address at all of those sites, they might go and try to reset the password at all of them and figure out how to reset one of them, and then they can get into all. So a few years back, you might recall there were some celebrity photos that were found on iCloud, and all these iCloud accounts were broken into at Apple. And it turns out, I believe that part of that was Amazon accounts broken into, and these celebrities were using the same password for Amazon as they were for iCloud. So if they could break into the Amazon account, then they could break into iCloud. So if you have a different password for each of these places, you're limiting your losses to the one they can break into. And most major sites now have support for something called two-factor. And that is far more secure than just a sign-in with a username and a password. Two-factor requires a trusted device or a second stage of authentication that if your password were to get out there, they wouldn't be another computer can't sign in to your account unless they can get a message, either a text message or a numeric code sent through a different service, or it's on a trusted device. So,
okay, so this is where, for instance, I forget a password and I go to reset my password and I get a message saying we're sending you a message to the email account that you have, and that way, or sending me a text message to my phone.
Right. So, I mean, that would be a password reset, but usually like Gmail now and iCloud and almost all major sites, social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they all support two-factor. So if I were to try to sign into my Facebook account on your Mac, I type in my email address and my Facebook password, it's going to say, now enter a 6-digit code. And the 6-digit code will be on my watch, my phone, and my computer. If I don't have any of those 3 devices,
okay,
I'll never be able to get into Facebook on your computer. So that means if someone outside were trying to get into your Facebook account, you would eventually get a message from Facebook saying, hey, someone's been signing into your account, but they can't get in. And you may still want to change your password because they're getting through the first gate, but they can't get to the second gate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which brings up probably one of the most vexing things for some people, and that is, how do I remember all of these passwords? Do I write them down?
So I'm not opposed to a piece of paper and a book with passwords, because it's far less likely that someone's going to come into your home and steal your password book than come into your Google Docs file that's completely open and unencrypted with your passwords. But there are some really great password management tools out there that are secure, that do work well. I'm in an all Apple universe, so I simply use Apple's iCloud keychain, and that works great for me, except my passwords aren't really accessible in Google Chrome or Firefox or other browsers. I have to be in Apple's browsers.
Okay, so you have to be in the Apple universe.
Yeah, so if you want to be a little more, if you want to be able to spread your wings a little bit, and even on your Apple devices, use Google Chrome, use Firefox, use other browsers, and still have access to your password library, there are plenty of tools like 1Pass or LastPass or any of those password tools that are encrypted. They're much safer than a sticky note on the desktop of your computer, and they will flow from one device to the other. Because one of the major issues is that very few people have just one device they use on the internet now. So in the past, if you had just a file with all your passwords, it would be on your computer, and then you're on your iPhone and you want to sign into something and you can't. So that's where those password tools can be really helpful.
And that's where Keychain can also work.
Yeah, my iCloud Keychain flows between all of my Apple devices, but only using my Apple browsers.
Okay. Some other issues in terms of software, spam emails, the websites that are somewhat less than honest,
Yep.
The pop-ups. Are there ways that I can reduce my number of these things that I have to deal with that would be, make them both safer for me to operate with my computer, but also less annoying?
Sure. So with actual spam that is, that's completely unsolicited and not from reputable places, unsubscribing usually just confirms that you're seeing it. So if you say, I don't want to see this anymore, and you get 3 times as many the next day, don't keep doing it. I would mark it as spam. Most mail clients have a spam filtering option, and the more
junk mail.
the junk mail, spam or junk mail. The more you mark things as junk mail or spam, the better it learns and starts to shift that over to a place where you wouldn't see it. And most email servers also have a blacklisting option where you can log into the email server's website and say, I don't ever want to see this again, it's spam. Google's pretty good at filtering spam automatically. And so if you have Gmail, that's that tends to be pretty good. The other thing, just in terms of spam that looks like it's real stuff, phishing, I would say phishing scams. You may get an email that will say it's from TD Bank, and you say, well, yes, I do bank with TD Bank, and it says your password your password is expired. Click here to reset it. Your bank shouldn't send you an email saying it's time to reset your password. So don't click the link in the email, because if you do, it's going to open your web browser. It's going to take you to a place that looks just like your bank, and it's going to let you type in your username and your password, and it's going to pretend to let you reset your password. But in reality, all they did is collect your username and password to TD Bank, so they can instantly go in and sign into your TD Bank account and try to figure out how to move your money away. So if you think it might be a real thing, leave the email aside. Don't click any links in it. Open your browser and go directly to tdbank.com, sign in. If TD Bank has a message for you, it will appear once you're signed in to their actual website. If they don't have a message for you when you sign in, that email was fake, and it's almost always fake anyway. So.
And I would assume another alternative, because this happens with credit cards and such, would be to take out your card, flip it over, find that 800 number or whatever on the back side, and call that number as opposed to the one that you see on your display.
Yes, absolutely. Don't never trust something that was sent to you. Go get it yourself. So flip that card over in your wallet, call the phone number on the back of the card. If you're looking for tech support, when you do a Google search for, and I see this a lot, if you have a problem, an actual problem, and you're seeking help, and you go to Google and you say, Apple tech support, and you press return, the first few results may not be Apple. And they will say Apple tech support and an 800 number, but they're not Apple. So the first thing to look for in a Google search is the word ad. The first few results usually say ad next to them. Someone's advertising Apple tech support. It's not Apple. The second thing to look for is when you click on the search result is to make sure at the top of your browser it says apple.com. Because if you're not at apple.com, you're not at Apple. You're
Okay, so
else.
the critical thing is look at the URL.
Yes.
Make sure that the address matches where you want to be going. And I think the same thing holds true for those emails we were talking about, that if the return address is not keybank.com or whatever, or
that's a good start for sure. Yeah.
And I've also noticed that a lot of the spam type emails or the phishing emails come to undisclosed recipients.
Yeah.
As opposed to
you.
To me.
Yeah, and with email, the return path sometimes is actually the legitimate place. So you could get a spam email and the reply to might actually be the legitimate company to make the email look more legitimate. So in most email programs, there's an option to view all headers or view the raw source of the email. It'll make the email ugly, but it'll let you see all of the data as to how the email reached you, how it got from point A to point B. And you can ignore all the things that don't make sense, but really look at the addresses, the something at something.com or .net, and if the domain in that raw data isn't, the .com isn't keybank.com or tdbank.com, it's not them. Okay. They wouldn't send an email from outside of their domain.
But I guess the best piece of advice is what you said before: contact the real number or the real website if you have any thoughts that there's a problem.
Right, from a trusted, verified way of getting it. The back of your card is a perfect example.
I often do presentations around the state, and one of the things that I will say is it's important to keep in mind that every action you take and every word you type or say online is being watched or recorded by someone or something. Am I right?
Yeah, there's really very little anonymity when it comes to our general use on the internet. If you're not in a very locked down specific environment, you're being, you could be subject to being watched and on your browsing habits. There are cookies that are tracking one place to the next. There are your email. When you send an email to someone, it's floating across the internet in clear text, and it could be intercepted anywhere along the way. So, never ever send super private information in an email message. I've had customers who email me a credit card number. They just send me a credit card number, and then they say, please send me this computer and charge this credit card. And I delete the email, and I send them a new email so that I don't have any content from the original email, and I say, I deleted your email with your credit card number. I am not allowed to take your credit card number by email, and I would suggest that you never send your credit card number in an email again, because it's not considered to be a secure way of transporting credit card numbers. Any e-commerce website that is processing credit cards has an SSL secured socket layer certificate that allows for any information being sent in the form, which is the credit card number, your name, your address, usually the shopping cart and everything now, gets encrypted when it leaves your computer, transports across the internet, and is decrypted at the other end by the recipient. So that's a safe way of transacting business. It's, and I talk to plenty of people who say, I don't use my credit card online. I'm like, well, yes, if you have a credit card, you do. Because when you go to the grocery store, your credit card number is going over the internet. So, the way that credit card numbers are transported is almost entirely over the internet. The thing we can do is try to make sure we're shopping with trusted vendors, not searching. Sometimes the best deal that you can find in a Google search isn't the best deal.
So then you also want to be looking in terms of the URL, that address line, for an HTTPS or a padlock. Sometimes the URL will be green now, or browsers have gotten a little fancier, but there's always an indicator that you're on an SSL secured website, and now most web browsers have an indication when you're not secure. So it'll say not secure next to it in many browsers. Okay. There is a tendency with many of us to try and save money. I think it's just natural. Yeah. And one of the ways that some people feel they can save money as far as computer use is, well, I don't need to update that operating system, or I don't need to get a new virus software because I have it from last year and it seems to be working fine. I can use my Microsoft Windows XT software because it still works. What's your sense about that type of economy?
Well, the thing with security is that Microsoft, Apple, and Google, the three major operating system providers, are only going to put. It's a constantly moving target. Security and vulnerabilities are discovered every day, and Apple, Microsoft, and Google have to focus on trying to keep their current operating system as secure as possible, because that's the product they're selling today. They also want to protect past customers, but only so far back, because it adds a lot of workload to go back 10 years and try to fix vulnerabilities that were in Windows XP or Windows Vista. So in the Windows world, anything older than Windows 7 really shouldn't be used on the internet anymore. You can't properly Microsoft is not patching known security flaws for Windows Vista or Windows XP or anything older. In the Mac world, you don't want to be using anything older than Mac OS 10.11, which was El Capitan. Just at the end of 2017, several hardware-based flaws were discovered with Intel processors, AMD processors, and other processors as well, the processors in Apple phones, Android phones, pretty much every device. Microsoft, Apple, and Google all responded with updates to patch hardware vulnerabilities with software quickly, but they did limit their response to the latest few operating systems. So Apple patched 10.11, 10.12, 10.13, and of course the upcoming 10.14 will be patched. But trying to make use of old equipment is fine as long as you're limiting the scope to an operating system. If you're using it on the internet, you really want to be in an operating system that the software developer is still supporting.
Okay.
So Windows 7 is old,
Right.
and if you're in the Windows environment, Microsoft has announced that in the beginning of I think it's 2019, might be 2020 though, they're going to stop patching Windows 7.
Virus protection, malware protection software. Important?
So I think the first level of importance is to practice skepticism when because no security software is going to completely protect you ever. You are the driver of your computer and you can bypass security software, but I think it is important to have some level of security. Paying more doesn't necessarily mean you get better software. There are really inexpensive solutions out there. There are free solutions out there that are pretty good. And any solution that's actively monitoring your computer is going to impact performance somewhere along the way. So there are trade-offs, but there are many good ones in the Mac world. If you want something that's very lightweight, I like Malwarebytes, but if you want something that's a little more protective, I actually like ClamXAV. The neat part about ClamXAV is that they don't have a recurring subscription cost. You pay once. And the reason for that is that ClamAV is used in the corporate world and it's used in the server world in the Unix environments, and it's open source, but it's also source code. The ClamXAV is a company that has added a graphical interface for the Mac, and they're just charging you for the graphical interface for free software.
Okay. We all look for bargains, I said. One of the bargains is, I go online and I find that I can get Microsoft Office for $50. Or I can get Photoshop for $65.95 or something like that, or Dreamweaver, the same thing.
Right.
Now, I know these software solutions tend to be a bit on the pricey side, in the hundreds of dollars. What are some of the dangers of picking up this $50 version of Microsoft Office?
Well, first of all, older versions may not run on newer computers. So if you were to find a deal on the previous version of Microsoft Office, the previous version for Mac is 2011. The current version is 2016. 2011 might actually install on your computer and run, but Microsoft's not supporting it. They're not patching it. And it's also a 32-bit program, and Apple is ending support for 32-bit software. So your life of the software might be shorter. The other problem is if you don't know the place you're buying it from, you don't know if that's a legitimate product key or if it's just a stolen product key. So you might be buying counterfeit software and paying real money for not real licensing. So you don't want to be a part of a scandal, and you want legitimacy with the software that you purchase. Most software now, you won't find any great deals because, for example, all Adobe software is by subscription. So there are, I guess they have a couple of non-subscription SKUs, but their key products are all subscription. And there are partners that can sell their product, but they have very low margins. So you won't tend to see much of a deal because when you buy Photoshop, it's going to be Photoshop CC, which stands for Creative Cloud. And that subscription gets registered with Adobe, and it's when it expires, you stop using it or you pay them. And you just won't see those kinds of deals anymore.
So that's also going to kill out the old idea of sharing.
Yes. So in the past, you could buy one copy of Microsoft Office and you could install it on 20 computers, not legally, but you could do it. And later on, the product would start to check across your home network and only let you open it on one computer. Now, the product registers with Microsoft's website and every now and then needs to check in. So you can't add, if you buy Microsoft Office and you install it on this Mac, and then you grab another Mac from the other room and you go to install it, if you only bought one license, it'll install, but it won't activate until you deactivate this one. So you would have to go to Microsoft's website and say, nope, not going to use that one
Which is why I had a problem with my Office 2016 when I installed it on this and encountered that because it was on my other computer.
Yeah, so you can just go to Microsoft's website and say, I'm not going to use that one anymore.
Right.
And,
There's a lot of personal information out on the internet. There are specialty companies that seem to be selling stuff. And is it my imagination that, pretty much your entire life is out there, or is that true?
There's a lot out there. I mean, Equifax shared a lot with, unwillingly, really, but the Equifax breach certainly brought to the mainstream media the attention that our information is out there and it's being sold, it's being shared, from our social media life to our Apple IDs. There's a price on every piece of your identity, and you may not be a big enough target for some, but you might be just the right size target for another. So I think it's important to just be as active and attentive to what we knowingly and willingly share, because the things we can start to do are just not fill out, when you get all these things about on Facebook or on your social media that are kind of like fun things, and they're really clickbait. You click on them and you fill out a survey, and then all of a sudden you'll get a notification from Facebook that says, well, this application wants access to this part of your information. Do you want to allow it? And if you don't say yes, then you can't finish the thing that you think is fun. Is it really that fun, though? Personally, in Facebook games and whatnot, they want access to parts of your, they want access to your friends list, or they want access to your timeline. You don't want to show some random survey everything that you post on Facebook necessarily.
Okay. I have this slogan which I use, I know a lot of others use, which is when something's offered to you free online, you're no longer the consumer, you're the product.
I completely agree with that entirely, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, though. And you mentioned Facebook and other social media, but what people post on those can be almost beyond what's necessary to conduct a social environment.
Of course. Another thing I've always said is say it, forget it, write it, regret it. And if you post things on social media, even if you pull them back, someone's screenshotted it. So, and it's still there, it's just kind of hidden. So you don't want to post photos that you wouldn't want to be, taped to the side of your car, or, if you post photos on Facebook, or you say things about other people on Facebook or any social media, it's out there. And someone, if it matters to someone, they're going to have a copy of it. They're going to have an archive of it. It'll be found. So, I've had employees at my stores that I've had to tell that they can't post anything about work on social media because it's just unprofessional. We value the privacy of everything that we do with all of the interactions with our customers, our vendors. We don't want to say anything negative about Apple, Microsoft, even competitors. because it just comes back to haunt you later. So, I think we're in a world of, writing negative reviews or just,
Right.
We have immediate access to this powerful tool, and we can say whatever we want, but then it's on the internet forever. And if people would take a few moments and think about it and decide, does this really matter? Is this something that's, and also with conflicts, I just find rather than posting a conflict in a public forum, have a direct conversation. When,
Right.
That's where email, while it's not super secure, you can have a very private conversation in email. It's not out there for the public.
Yeah, as opposed to on your Facebook account. Or,
Exactly. Yeah, I see a lot of those battles back and forth, and then everyone, people patch things up, and then everyone else is expected to forget what they saw.
Gotcha. Last big topic, Wi-Fi. It seems to be now everywhere. I mean, we have, as you know, in our home, several computers, the smartphones, the iPads, the whole works, and everything's connected through our Wi-Fi network at home. How secure are they?
So, I see a lot of Wi-Fi networks that are open still with no password, and there are Wi-Fi routers that are old that haven't been updated to newer firmware. So Wi-Fi can be have some basic security, but the important part about modern Wi-Fi is that good routers will have some updates available to patch over flaws that have been discovered in the WPA, the security standard. There are several exploits that have been found in major brands of routers like Linksys and Netgear and Belkin and all of these routers. And some basic information was to make sure you reset your router from time to time, because we just leave our routers on forever. But also to log into the router and see, is there an update for it? And if your router is really old, you might want to replace it, because some of the $29 special routers from 8 or 9 years ago, the companies that made those routers are no longer writing firmware updates for them, so they won't patch known vulnerabilities.
But you definitely want to have a password protection.
Definitely want to have a password. And if you want people to be able to use your Wi-Fi and not have access to all of the devices on your network, most modern routers have an option called a guest network that I still like to put a password on, but the guest network kind of walls off your home network, the devices in your house that are yours. So the guest network would be if someone wants to come to your house and put their mobile phone on your network and browse the internet and check their email. And it's a nice accommodation to give people, but if you give them your main Wi-Fi password and their device has a problem, then their device is talking to all of the things on your network. So your friend comes over with a Windows laptop that's got a crypto locker on it, and you've got a Windows-based product just sitting there doing nothing. Their crypto locker and whatever is spreading it is on your Wi-Fi network and can be shared.
Mm-hmm. Another side of Wi-Fi. We are a very mobile society. And as a result, we like taking our technology with us. Our tablets, laptops, smartphones, and society seems to have accommodated us by creating Wi-Fi hotspots. You walk into places like Starbucks, McDonald's, most restaurants, hotels. I won't go to a hotel unless I can have Wi-Fi in my hotel room.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably some dangers that we need to be aware of.
There certainly are. One thing to look out for would be if you join a Wi-Fi network at a cafe or a hotel or something, and all of a sudden in your list of devices that are near you, you can see everyone else's computers. They can see you too. So that's just at a basic level, you are exposing yourself there. You want to make sure and turn things off like file sharing and screen sharing and services that are on your computer that allow you to be able to connect to your computer from other computers. You don't want other people doing that. You could take other steps, such as a VPN software, so that your traffic is being diverted through another network, or you could also just be very, very cautious about what types of things you're doing while you're connected to that Wi-Fi network. If you're, what tends to still be relatively safe is e-commerce, because you're doing secure. You're at a website that's sending encrypted information to and being decrypted at the recipient. So that anything intercepted there would be, garbage to the person getting in. But I've been places where I really don't know that I could trust the Wi-Fi at the place, and in those cases, I opt to simply use my smartphone as a hotspot, because it's much more secure than an unknown Wi-Fi hotspot. If I'm staying at a national hotel, they tend to have some really intelligent wireless routers that kind of wall off individual users a little bit, and I might still opt for a VPN software.
Okay, so VPN is one way to at least provide a little more
it kind of
protection.
Moves your traffic outside of it moves it into a different stream where people wouldn't necessarily.
Of course, we're battering around acronyms, and we probably should say that VPN is a personal. Virtual private network.
So, as an example, my retail stores, there is a VPN between each location, so that's always connected. So we have our own secure VPN, which allows us to move files store to store over the internet, but not open what are called ports in our router to allow outsiders in. So this VPN kind of creates a very open situation between our stores, but closed to the outside world.
Okay. Well, as you know, as I've also just said a couple minutes ago, I have a new computer. And that leaves me with an old computer that I may not want anymore. And I can probably donate it or whatever. Before I do that, are there some safe steps that I should be taking with respect to my old technology?
Sure. So with old computers, what we used to do was zero the data on the hard drive. So we used to start up from either a recovery disk or a recovery partition on the computer. And with the built-in disk utility software, we could say, not only do I want to erase the drive, but I want to write zeros from one end of the drive to the other. Now, Apple has kind of removed that feature on newer models because that's not good for solid-state drives. So the best solution, if you have an Apple computer with a solid-state drive and you want to make sure that you've completely wiped the data so that it would be highly unlikely that anyone would ever be able to access that, what I recommend is, if you haven't already, on the old computer, turn on File Vault. File Vault is whole disk encryption. So what it does is it's going to encrypt the data that you have on the computer. And then throw away all of your items that you really want to be gone for good, and do what's called a secure empty trash. So you can hold down Option and do empty trash, and it'll say secure empty trash. That'll write zeros over that data. And then I would go ahead and erase the computer. After it's completely file vaulted, the whole drive is encrypted, and then you erase encrypted data, you're pretty safe.
You're pretty safe.
So it adds a few extra steps, but it's one of those pieces that has come up recently in that we don't have that option in disk utility to just zero the drive. Alternatively, there are other utilities that could write zeros over all of the known data on the drive. But.
Well, we have had a great conversation. Do you have any final comments you want to make about safe computing and avoiding being a victim of fraud?
Sure. So one thing I hear a lot is, well, my problem happened late at night, and these people are in my computer, and I don't know what to do. I now know, I'm pretty sure they're bad, but I'm talking to them, and I don't want them to do anything bad to me. And so I just let them keep going. Or, you know, they just don't know where to go. So my advice is, if you feel like you're in a bad situation, someone's controlling your computer, take the internet away from them first. Don't soft, coat this in any way. Yank the cord out of your router, close the lid on your laptop, and then wait until the next day when you can actually get the problem taken care of. You don't want to leave someone you don't trust controlling your computer, and you never want to. You want to make sure if you ever do remote access support with anyone that you know who you're talking to, because there are legitimate organizations that do remote support. If you call Apple 1-800-APL-CARE, the real Apple, they do offer remote support. They can take control of your screen. They're never going to ask you for your credit card number for $300, and they're never going to sell you a plan. They can take control of your screen. If you call Brown Computer Solutions, we offer remote services, but we try to walk you through the whole thing, and we explain to you when we have access, and then we tell you that we're kicking ourselves out so that we can't get back in. So I like to tell people that if you don't know the person on the other end, you don't want them in your computer. If you wouldn't open the door and let them in your house and make them a cup of coffee, don't let them in your computer.
Don't let them in your computer. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you here. My guest today has been Patrick Brown of Brown Computer Solutions, and we've had some good suggestions on how best to protect yourself as a computer user from becoming a victim of fraud.